You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
If we have a bigger picture commitment, if we have something that we stated we're about and this is value we provide, then we're looking at how can I provide that value? And it will have us go beyond our ego or go beyond normal human considerations when we're playing that bigger game. In order for me to be an active person who's exercising regularly, I want to have a race on the calendar. And it's that race that has me committed to getting up in the morning because I've got that bigger picture commitment. So if we know in our heart of hearts that we're the leader committed to X, and we need to go have a hard conversation in order to demonstrate that commitment, we'll go have that hard conversation.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. Amy, welcome to The Break. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. I had a great time talking with you on your podcast. I know that hasn't released yet, but it was a great warm up for this conversation. It might be a little less structured than you're used to, but we're going to have some fun no matter what, because I'm so excited that you and I got connected. And I'll tell you what, the topic on my mind today is courage. I've been thinking about it a ton. It permeates a lot of the work that I do, the people that I come in contact with, the people who want to make some monumental change in their life, but are scared to do that. So I think about that word a lot, and I know you do too. I want to know, to kick this off, just what does courage mean to you personally?
Yes. So courage is not the absence of fear.
Yeah.
Courage is believing in ourselves, believing in the people around us, and being willing to step forward. I know that talked to you about the courage of a leader, 4 pillars.
Right.
So I noticed in my work with leaders that every time I was inspired or impressed by a leader, they were demonstrating courage of some kind. So I started categorizing that, right? And then I started doing some interviews and some research on this, and I came up with the 4 pillars. The courage to be authentically you, the courage to say what needs to be said in a moment, and of course that can take very different shapes. The courage to trust the legacy, which is our own leadership legacy, our own purpose of our leadership, what we bring to every interaction, project, relationship. And then the courage to be bold and create the extraordinary. Not get wrapped up in cynicism that it's so easy to do these days, not just reacting to all of our inboxes, but what are the actions that I want to take to get me the results that I really desire? I know you work with your clients on that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. I mean, I think about when I think about courage, it can take a lot of forms, and I really like those pillars, and I want to kind of dig into those a little bit.
Sure.
I think about the individual first, right? Like, I mean, to be courageous in front of others requires you to have some level of courage for yourself. And that's kind of your pillar number 1, right? Like the authentically you. So I'm going to have some follow-up questions here, and this is kind of where I want to start the conversation, I guess. Talk to me more about that authentically you piece. This, to me, is a linchpin for a lot of people. I think there are like societal implications and pressures that don't allow us to be our full selves. There's comparison, there's all sorts of things. But dive into that one. Let's take that one forward a little bit here.
Yeah, I'm really glad in your thinking that you went first to individual. And I do think it starts there. And there's so many shoulds and comparisons in our world, right? And in our society, there have been different leaders and different types of leadership that have been put on pedestals for us, right? You're supposed to be like this person or like that person. And I really love working with leaders to determine like, what's your way of doing leadership? And I love that there is becoming more of an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion in our world, and understanding that leaders can look and sound and act in very different ways, right? A leader doesn't have to be someone who can who's tall and can stand on stage and can be really charismatic and inspire us in those ways. There are a multitude of ways for one to inspire, right? And to get others engaged. So each individual, what are your strengths? What are your passions or your interests? And I feel like our leadership legacy resides where those two overlap, right? And determining that purpose. What are we about? What are we bringing forth with our leadership? Whether it's coming to companies and being an interim CFO and, transforming the finances and how people think about budgets and P&L, or if it's coming in and implementing enterprise-wide software systems, or if it's someone who brings care and compassion to every conversation they have, or they streamline and clarify work, or they get things done with diverse teams, like whatever our purpose is, knowing what that is and understanding our style and how we tend to operate.
Yeah. But I'm a huge fan of really, again, I think the work is internal in getting to know yourself. But I think the challenge comes with like, we do that, or some people do that to a certain extent, but we are still looking at the lanes as developed by society, right? So like, I'm really curious as to how you get people to start leaning into their uniqueness and strengths and the ways that they do things and their passion, if they themselves feel like those are a little bit not mainstream. And that question comes like, I feel that way. So you brought up diversity, equity, inclusion, and I can absolutely see from the perspective that there are a lot of people out there afraid to be themselves, right? That may look a little bit different than me. But all at the same time, I can say as a white male, I've got these problems too, being myself. And I've been in situations where I've felt like it's debilitating to lean into something about me. So I know that this is widespread, and it's a problem that's hampering 90% of people out there, right? So this is a universal thing. And I'm just thinking, if I've got that problem, I can't imagine a lot of people do. So how do we get people to stop saying like, oh, I have to be the expert because society told me this is how leaders have to act? Or how do we break that mold and get people to embrace that uniqueness?
Yeah. There's a lot of layers there to
right
times, aren't there? Yeah. And yeah, I really feel for those that feel like they're another, right, in their situation. A few things. Actually got a few phrases down over here to organize my thinking. I mean, the one thing is we've got to ground ourselves in the idea that we provide the best value when we're bringing ourselves, right? And what's 100%. Natural and what's innate to us.
100%.
And there are studies that show that, right? When we're leveraging our strengths, when we're doing what's innate to us, right? Performance results increase. Now, in reality, how do you get that done if you're not part of the majority, even like in the way that you think, or you're younger than everybody else, right? Or you're the only non-tech person in this situation, right? Or you're the only person of color or only female, whatever it might be.
Or you're older than everybody, or I mean, you can say it anyway. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, and I think there can be something to strategically finding your advocates in the organization, right? Is it your boss? Is it a mentor or someone? Like how do you develop those relationships so that you have people that are advocates? Because it's one thing, and I would advocate for this as well, for us to speak up, right? Like if we notice that, okay, I'm the youngest in the room. That's not true. Like I'm the only non-tech person in the room, right? Then, and I say an idea and it gets passed over. I say an idea, it gets passed over. I see someone share an idea that sounds really similar to what I just said, and it gets picked up on, right? We've got to find our ways to share that feedback, right? And bring awareness to what's happening there. Right. And I've worked with leaders like, what do you say in the group setting? What do you say to folks one-on-one to bring that awareness, right? And to build advocates inside of the organization. There also can be looking at cultural fit, right? There's cultural fit, like what are the jobs that we fit in and what are the cultures that we fit in? Now, I don't mean that to say that if someone's not being listened to, then go find somewhere else. No, absolutely not.
Right.
Everybody should be listened to and have their voice. But sometimes it's like, where do my skills and my style, where do they best fit in a position,
right.
in an industry, in a culture?
Right. And it strikes me like in how you're describing it as it is a two-way street. Like it can't just be on leadership to accommodate you. They need to be open, but you also yourself have to do the work to understand. Like you have to give people. I know some organizations, and I'm one to hate on bureaucracy big time, but like most people in most situations are trying to do their best. They're not trying to be evil or whatever. So there is a responsibility on you as the person, if you are not being heard for whatever reason, to not put yourself in a box of, oh, I'm such and such way, so I can't, this isn't working. Like there is an element of what's the homework that I have to do to figure out what is the missing piece, and how I can get better at that in this organization or find a different one. Right. I mean, to me, it's a two-way street. You can't just abdicate all of that responsibility. And that's courageous, because now you're looking at yourself in the mirror. Like here we get into the individual stuff. You're looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, all right, it's not all external. It might be a lot. It could be. But like use that, give that benefit of the doubt, look at it from a different angle and see, what do I need to do? And that to me is a very courageous act.
Yeah. In all of this, Mike, I find myself often giving the guidance of being overt. Right? Being overt about what we're thinking, about how we feel, about why we're having the conversation that we're having right now. It's like a lot of people jump into content without context creating or explaining why. Right. I'm passionate about this and I'm feeling like my voice is not heard. I feel like I have something of value to bring from the customer's experience or whatever it is. And and flagging why you want to have the conversation that you want to have at that moment.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Context in our society today, context is so key, because we are polarized, we are black and white, we are immediate, we are second by second, and that leaves no room for nuance. That leaves no room for having like a genuine, good reason for approaching a topic and asking maybe a controversial question or just maybe challenging something. It's not me against you, it's we're fighting to win. And it might not even be a fight, but it's just So context is so key. I love that word overt. I have not used that word much, but I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not just asking for what you want. It's not just being blunt. It's like having some courage to voice it, but then really get into the weeds on why. That is missing in our society for sure. So I love that word. That makes a ton of sense. While we're on the topic of talking, I mean, that's pillar number 2 is the courage to say what's needed to be said. And my favorite, and maybe we're not going to go this way, but my favorite conversations that need to be had are with ourselves. So I love the idea of starting there, and that's kind of where I was going a little bit with the two-way street piece before. But talk to us a little bit about how you view this pillar, how you see it in leadership, and I'll jump in and ask some follow-up questions.
Yeah. I like, again, that you're starting with the individual, right? Like, am I being real with myself about what is happening here, where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are, right? What I actually want in this situation. And am I taking personal responsibility for that? Am I doing everything that I know to do to influence the outcome that I want to have? Yeah. When I say this in front of groups, the courage to say what needs to be said, usually I get nods, right? Because we can all think about the time that a leader did say what needed to be said. And we were like, oh, thank goodness, right? They had our back in that moment, or they took the division in a new direction because what we were doing was not working and we were all worried. So we want that in our leaders, and there's a variety of ways and situations in which we want it. Another thing that I beat a drum here with pillar number 2 is that I think there's too much out there, Mike, about leadership, which is, do this, do that. Like, it's robotically about the behaviors. There's that saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah. I
like to say belief eats behavior for breakfast. That if we do the belief work, the intention work, right? So I got to come to you, Mike, and I got to say what needs to be said. I got to give you some tough feedback. You had this impact on a customer last week in a meeting. Don't think it was great. What are my intentions for that conversation, right? What are my intentions for you, for our relationship, for the customer, for our continuous improvement? And we get really clear that, we want to empower the other person. We want to leave them motivated and, and whole and complete, right? And not feeling torn down in any way. When we're clear about our intentions and we're overt and we start our conversation with part of our intentions, I really believe that we can say anything to anybody, right? There's so many conversations we avoid in our world. But if we do some of that, talk about process, and here's what I want to accomplish in this conversation. Here's why I'm having this conversation with you. I invite you to participate in this way. And here's how I promise to you that I will participate in this conversation, right? I'll listen first, whatever it might be. And then I think we can really create unimaginable things in conversations. I know I've gone to conversations going like, I don't know how we are ever going to get past this, but I'm going to do my due diligence and I'm going to try to have this conversation and see if we can get anywhere. And then we do.
You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. So the part of that is like you're creating this realm of psychological safety for your teams, basically, or people under you.
Yeah.
Developing the reputation, right? It's your progress is a line. It's not just a dot or a one instant, but developing the reputation for being that leader that is contextual and here for you and growth, like investing in people and growth, like that all makes a ton of sense. I feel like another one big area that this pillar comes up is in managing up. So
yeah,
team members, directors, or whatever going up and saying what needs to be said. And that's where a ton of waste happens in companies, untruths happen or are left to grow in companies, because people are like, no, this guy or gal, write my paycheck. I need to be on their good side all the time. And I even see it in my organization where I go, we're a very small organization, but I go and I say in a meeting, I say, guys, here's what we're going to do. I explicitly want you to push back on me. I explicitly want you to tell me what's an error in this thinking. I explicitly want you to give me ideas. And it still can be a problem where they're just like, yeah, I like that. And it's like, there's no way on earth I've got the greatest ideas in the world. No way. So how do we develop the courage as individuals to say the things that need to be said upwards without fear that is going to negatively impact our career and our livelihoods?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Mike, I'd actually like to speak to both sides. It's really great when our leaders are saying to us, hey, I want you to poke holes in this. I want you to tell me what's not working. And I've heard many leaders say what you just said, which is, I'm asking for it. I'm saying I want it. And somehow they're still not providing it to me. Right. So a couple thoughts there. Stating why, again, overt and intentions, right? I think we can have better meetings. So I want you to tell me ideas to have better meetings. I want these to be more effective, more efficient, whatever the thing that we desire. Or I'm a leader and I'm working on my decisiveness, right? And I want you to let me know when decisions are not being made clear enough, quickly enough, or we don't feel like all perspectives were taken, like kind of put it out there. What do we specifically want feedback on? It seems like semantics, but also asking for, I want one thing that's working well and one thing that we can improve. Sometimes folks will open up more if they say, okay, say the positive thing. You get to give your boss the positive thing, but then give me the thing that we can improve as well. I want one on both sides of the fence. Just some ideas there.
That at least opens up the door, to a conversation. I could see doing that. It is a little bit of trickery, but I could see doing that and going with the positive and then being like, all right, now you're on the spot. I need the negative as well. I mean, that's kind of silly, but I could see that. Yeah. I think it does go back to the reputation of the leader too. And this idea that people can't judge you on, or can't get a good idea of what you are doing and where they stand with you through one or even a series of inconsistent actions. It's that line graph of what you're doing and how you're building your reputation. If you have the reputation of being that person that's going to have your back no matter what you say, then people will open up.
Yeah. Or who has taken feedback and made changes as a result thereof. I just thought of two other points, Mike. Some folks might need some notice, right? I'm going to want to talk about how I can do better with X. Can you think about that, and come to the meeting with a couple of improvement ideas? You might also do something that's anonymous. Start a Google sheet or something and have folks add ideas to it. Sometimes people feel more comfortable that way.
Yeah, having it on the agenda, giving people a little lead time, that makes sense because people are conditioned to be one way in meetings because that's how they've gone throughout history. And now, okay, we're asking for something different. That is a little bit of a difficult transition that can happen. That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, we started this conversation, Mike, with your question about how do people manage up and say what you said to their leadership. Often here, I will talk about a coaching approach. I mean, again, I think we can go back to some of the things that I've said. What's our intention? I know that our internal working relationship with the marketing group is really important to us, right? I have some feedback about something that you're doing that I think is having an unintended impact. Can we talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we can do that context, that intention work. I think also, and this can feel like a safer route for many people, is to use a coaching approach and ask a question. I'm concerned about the timeline on this project. Can you talk me through how this is going to get balanced? How we're going to balance resources with everything else that we have going on in Q2?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or, have we thought about how we're approaching these things recently is impacting our relationship with the marketing group? Ask questions, right? And learn more about the thinking.
That makes a ton of sense. It's a softer approach than just coming out guns blazing, obviously. There's all sorts of soft skills that are involved here and communication, nonverbal communication and tone and all of that can absolutely help as well. But that is probably ground zero. I feel like if you're confused as to how to manage up and you want to say something, try to put it in a form of a question. And actually, it's interestingly enough, like ChatGPT or something like that can help you. You go describe the issue. You want to ask this in a question. Give me 10 or 20 ways to phrase this question in a non-threatening way. And you have ideas in seconds, which is sort of interesting.
I love that.
Was there ever a moment in your life that you look back on and just say that was the moment that I really understood that I wanted to work with leaders on this topic of courage? Was there a moment that really drove your purpose or your legacy, if you will, for doing what you're doing today?
There's one moment that's coming up. There's probably ones that are earlier in my career as well, but then we start to rely on my memory, Mike.
You and me both. I got a bad one too.
Which isn't always great. I was facilitating a workshop for a team, and it was designed to be a acceleration. It was a new leader, fairly new leader for this group. There was some turnover in the group members as well. So we were talking about strengths. We were talking about trust. We were workshopping some things, right? Who's going to take the lead on different things? How are we defining our roles and our responsibilities? And this sales leader, she really impressed me. And she was downright inspiring. There was a risk they needed to take. They needed to move in a new direction, and it was going to change their processes. It was going to change their mindset. It was going to change how they interacted with customers and prospects. And so a ton of work that needed to be done individually and collectively to be able to operate in this new way. And Mike, I can't remember the exact words, but she stated her belief in the team. She said she researched the reputations of the new members, right? And could speak to value that each individual would bring. I know we need to move in this direction. I don't know all of how we're going to get there, but I know we've got the expertise and the knowledge in the room collectively to figure this out and to get there. So there was a ton of ambiguity and uncertainty in what they were going to do. But Mike, I saw everybody in that room as she talked and, set this context and her belief in getting there, while also acknowledging, I don't know how we're going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. And with all of that uncertainty there, like I saw the room take a collective sigh of relief and like yes, right? Like I'm up for this. So what she did in that moment, I'm like, this is leadership.
Yeah.
And yeah. And how do I inspire this? Like, in every leader to do it in their way.
Yeah, you could see the value creation and the compounding, the catalyst of that moment, catalyzing everyone in the room and the leverage there. That's a very powerful moment to sort of be a part of and witness. And obviously, it seems like you have, taken that juice forward and said, "This is where I want to live. This is the energy flow that I get, that I want to create every day." So,
yeah,
I don't know if that tees up pillar 3, because I don't know how exactly you define it. But talk to us about pillar 3. Is that on point? Like what is our purpose? And take it from there.
Yeah. Yes. So I didn't have the conversation with that sales leader about what her leadership legacy, how she would articulate that. But I absolutely believe that she demonstrated it in that moment. The legacy.
So what do you mean by leadership legacy? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. An aspiration about what you want to create or how you want to be known.
Okay.
Right? It could be a new way of doing business in your field or in your function. It could be improved set of processes. It could be a patent. It could be being a visionary leader, being a compassionate leader, being someone who gets things done through global teams, creating innovative cultures. It could be many, many things. It's often a leadership trait for which we want to be known. And I love to do this work, Mike, with emerging leaders, newer leaders. And, often people say to me like, well, they don't have enough experience to know like where they can provide that true, unique value. And I say, well, they probably do. And if they get it kind of wrong, that's great. Declare what your leadership legacy is. Start playing in there full out and intentionally bringing that to projects, bringing it to relationships, bringing it to interactions. And then they'll be able to quickly fine tune if they haven't nailed that quite right out of the gate. And it's something that we're continuously creating and leaving behind. Sometimes people hear that word legacy and it's like, oh, okay, that's what we think about when we're in our 70s. But no, I want you to be thinking about it from the beginning. And I believe we're all leaders, whether we have that title or not. Because I think the most powerful leaders, they're in a situation, they might not be the facilitator or the leader of a meeting, but they're seeing something that's missing. And they're willing to put it in, like we haven't heard from voices from these people, this part of our group, right? And they flag that, we haven't heard from marketing. Let's hear from them. When we put that leadership in every circumstance that we're a part of.
So why is this so important? I mean, if I'm a middle manager, I'm working a job, I obviously want to do well. I need to lead people, but why is having a leadership legacy important for me?
To have the courage in the moments. If we have a bigger picture commitment, if we have something that we stated we're about, and this is value we provide, then we're looking at how can I provide that value? And it will have us go beyond our ego or go beyond normal human considerations when we're playing that bigger game. I think about I love to have, in order for me to be an active person who's exercising regularly, I want to have a race on the calendar.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that race that has me committed to getting up in the morning or, doing that run that's on my calendar for the day because I've got that bigger picture commitment. So if we know in our heart of hearts, that we're the leader committed to X, and we need to go have a hard conversation in order to demonstrate that commitment, we'll go have that hard conversation.
I want to ask you about races because I want to talk about doing hard things, but I'm going to put a pin in that for a second because I want to stay on topic. Like the leadership legacy piece that you talk about, I think is very related to what I talk about, which at an individual level, which is really like that word purpose, or I use identity as well. And we do a few things in my coaching program to create that statement and get very clear on that. So I do want to ask what you do to help people clarify that. Maybe let's start there first. How do you help people clarify like what that legacy is?
Yes, definitely looking at strengths, the unique value that you provide, what people come to you for. Create that list, do that reflection. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What do you care about? Make that list. And where those intersect is the area of our leadership legacy.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. And to drive the point home, I mean, I use the words advantage, disadvantage. And what we talked about earlier was like, if you're not being your true self and you're not doing the things that are innately wired for, you are actually operating at a distinct disadvantage. When you are trying to be somebody else or do something the way somebody else does it, you're not going to win that game. Yeah. But when you're able to embrace the things that come easier to you or naturally to you and layer on different skill sets or use those in different ways, now you're operating from a distinct advantage and you just have to figure out what field to play on, basically. So that's how I think about that. And purpose.
Yep.
And purpose and identity, they're probably not the same thing, but they're very close. And how I think about it is like, it's that foundation that you have when everything crumbles around you. That's what you lean on. And I think as a leader, it's sort of the same thing. The way you described it, it's like, shit's going to hit the fan. Things are not, either you're going to have moments in your life where things do not go well. And your ability to be a leader in those moments means getting back to that foundation of what you do and what people can get out of you in those moments without really having to think about it. So like that belief piece is so important from the individual level to inspire that belief in others. And I think that is like the key part. I think people gloss over this and they're like, I'm just whatever. I work at the logistics company or, and it's like, but you're a human being.
Yes.
You can inspire other human beings.
Yes.
And to do that, you need to understand your purpose so you can show that to the world and people can buy in or at least respect you very much for the way that you do put that in the world. So that's just like, I guess, my 2 cents on that. And again, for our audience who's maybe thinking about doing something else, they don't necessarily want to become leaders in their organization. That is why we do that work across coaching styles, across leadership coaches or whatever. It's that piece. So I'll yield it back to you. I've been talking for a while, but go ahead.
we might have different words for it. I love your word. I love your word foundation, because that really says it's something that grounds us in moments of chaos when things are swirling around us, grounds us in moments of choice. There's a fork in the road. What are we going to do? And using our foundation, our advantage, our leadership legacy as guidance throughout our lives.
Yeah.
I really think this is important, right? Because if people question, why do we need to do this work? They're probably relating to it like, it's just like this validating exercise I did one day. Like, yeah, that's me. That's kind of neat. but really it's putting it to use day to day. When things happen and we're about to react in not so great a way, or we need to make a decision, or something's not working, right? Why is it or is it not working? Bring what we know about ourselves and our legacy or our foundation to the situation so that we can make decisions and adjustments accordingly.
Yeah. At its highest level, I mean, I think the belief part is huge. And second to that is what I think people don't get out of doing this work is it's a decision-making filter. Yeah. So we're making choices every single day. Some obviously have more consequence than others. But if you're trying to decide what you should do with your life or how you want to grow in your career and lead people, or what direction you want to take your company, what projects you want to take on, all of those things can be filtered by this type of work because you're setting a bar. And that's the hurdle rate. And if your project or the decisions don't meet that, number one, that's your cutoff. But number two, you've got far less options that meet that criteria. So now you can focus on those.
Love it.
And so that's from like kind of the logical, practical piece of our brains wondering like, what the purpose stuff? Like, why would I do this? It's pokey, whatever. That's why. Like, get your logical brain to buy into that and then use it as a tool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was smirking throughout that, Mike. I mean, first of all, I love the decision-making filter provides the focus, but I'm also smirking because I've had times where it's like, okay, author of The Courage of a Leader, like what would that person do in this situation? Yeah. Like, oh, I've got to buck up and show some courage here. And
totally.
Take that step forward.
And that goes back to saying what needs to be said, right? I mean, again, to yourself. So I'm loving the pillars because now like we logically go to being bold, which I take to mean do harder and harder things. Mm. And I don't know if that's how you think about it. I want to know how you think about it, but that's how I think about it when I hear it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really taking those priority actions that are going to get you to where you want to go. And that could be doing the belief work. I know sometimes, Mike, if I'm not making progress in an area, I'm like, how am I getting in my own way here?
Right.
I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And that idea that beliefs affect our behaviors affect our results. Right. So if I'm up there in the beliefs and it's like, I think that this is going to go well, but I don't ever think that it could go exceptionally well. Right. Or like, I'm not going to be able to be the speaker that speaks at events this big or, however we might be limiting our thinking. Then there's actions that we don't even see as possible, or we're not going to take them very powerfully. And then it's going to limit our results. So I'll do the work of what kind of beliefs are running through my head now, which lead to what kind of behaviors, which are giving me my current results. Okay, what would I need to believe and say about myself in order to take these actions and get new results? That's a tool I learned from Lead True organization. We call it the 6 box, right? You've got your 3 boxes for the current and your 3 boxes for the desired. And I've said to myself, oh, I'm getting stuck here. I gotta do the 6 box.
Yeah. So boldness, hard things, taking the actions. I'm just curious, what is like the hardest thing you've ever taken on or the biggest challenge you've ever put yourself to?
I mean, professionally, it's probably starting my own business. Personally, I took on a 100-mile race.
Talk to us about that.
The 100-mile race. Yeah. So I like to have these big goals, and And I'll trust it. Like if they call to me, I'll do it. I started doing triathlons because I wanted to do an Ironman. The very first triathlon I ever registered for was an Ironman, a year out, and then I did other triathlons to lead up to that. The 100-mile race. Yeah. I mean, it's just, you put yourself on a path of figuring out like, how can I stay moving on my feet for as long as possible? But also I read a book about feet and not getting blisters. Yeah. Right. And practicing nutrition and what can my body handle as I'm in forward motion for that amount of time. I didn't really practice sleep deprivation because, the longest run I did getting ready for the 100 was a 50. But you got to trust it puts you in a place if you got to trust the process.
Right.
You got to trust the work. Because I got to tell you, there's a part of me, Mike, that's like, shouldn't I do a 75-mile first so that it's not that big of a leap? I mean, I thought that with the marathon too. Like, what? We're just going up to 20? Shouldn't I take on more? There's an additional 6. Yep. That's a long time.
Yep. Totally. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I like putting myself on a journey of learning. I know that there's going to be a lot of exciting milestones to hit, different things to figure out, reach a new distance for the first time. But there's also going to be a ton of breakdowns and things that don't go well on the way there. And I'm like, do we love those moments? But it's like, I remind myself, like, this is living, right? Like, this is living. Yeah. I've got something at stake. And for some reason, these things inspire me. I mean, and I don't care if these things inspire other people, but find what inspires you.
You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. Yeah, that's part of the leaning into just listening to your own authenticity. Just taking, there's power in that. You got to tap into that. You got to see where that just goes. You can't suppress it for too long. You can for a while, but when you suppress these things, that's how you end up 42 and stuck in your career and, having a midlife crisis and all that. Is like when you suppress these things. The sooner you can start to listen to yourself and then find the playing field that you line up on, you have a way easier road. And as we talked about on your podcast, I have done an Ironman and I know what that's about. I mean, it's a crazy commitment. Yeah. There was something that called to me about that challenge as well. And I honored it. And the whole time I trained, I didn't think there was a chance I could do it. Even when I was training, right up till a couple days before the race. But yeah, when you taper off your training and you don't go all the way and you start to feel like your fitness is still going, even after you've tapered, that's an amazing feeling. And that's that belief gap where it's like, holy cow, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. And you can eat
for anyone who wants to hear more about Amy's journey with that race and all of the trials and tribulations she ran into. They're probably too long for us to get into right now, but go to her website, which we'll give you. It's courageofaleader.com, I think, and you can see one of her keynotes. And it's a really cool story of getting over problems, not quitting in the face of, just doing a race like that on its own. Plus you ran into a whole bunch of issues. So go check that out. It's a really good story. But I want to ask, what did you learn from that experience and doing those races and those difficult things that you take with you to this day, like in your professional journey, in your life? What are there any nuggets that stick with you from that experience?
I would say 3 things. Problem solving skills.
Yeah.
Mike, I've shown up to the gym with exactly 80 minutes to do the 60-minute workout, right? So I've got to like get on the bike and do it and shower real quick, and I don't have my cycling shoes. So I don't have time to go back home. So okay, what am I going to do with my 60 minutes, right? And just thinking about, okay, am I going to schedule it for another time? Am I going to do what I can right now? But accepting that because that frustrates me when I'm the one that's made the mistake and I consider myself organized and detail oriented, but I showed up without my shoes. So that problem solving in the moment, and I've had to do problem solving in races as well. And then, kind of getting the don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
When you're training for an Ironman, you are taking on an all-day event. And depending on what race you do at what time of the year, you're going to be out in the heat of the day,
right,
or whatever the weather conditions are. So I'll run at hot times. Like you just kind of get over like trying to find the ideal circumstances. You kind of stop sweating some of the small stuff.
Yeah.
And then the belief, the takeaway that we can do more than we think that we can do.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the magic. That's the purpose of doing hard things, is to prove to yourself that you can do that. It's the journey. It's the overcoming. That's the feeling that sticks with you over the course of your life and creates a happy and fulfilled life for you, rather than the individual accomplishments or the individual notoriety or the pay increases or whatever it is. It's I took on this challenge. I didn't myself think that I could do it, and still did it. Figured it out. Yeah. The ones for me were definitely we can do way more than we think. The consistency matters over intensity piece. So you have to, you can take days off, but like do something. Even if it's 5 minutes, like just to keep this string going. That's so powerful in your mind. I think like not falling off the wagon and trying to like remotivate to get back on it. And then what was the other one I was going to say? It's escaping. I set tiered goal, which was interesting. And I've
tiered goal?
kind of trying to figure out tiered. Yeah. And I'll explain it. Like, basically I said, all right, my first goal is I want to complete this race and have it like the best day of my life, not be completely crapped out. Right. So maybe that's going just a lot slower than I need to. That was like number one. I want to enjoy this day.
Love it.
Number two was, if I feel really good, I had a time goal that I would like to meet. Okay. So like if I just felt like, okay, I'm halfway through this race, I had a time goal in mind, but I also didn't wear any wearable. So I wasn't looking at it all the time. And I was going by feel. And then the third one was if the weather was perfect and I felt good, I had a different time goal. And so what I did was like, I didn't put it all on, I have to meet this time goal. It was like, I gave myself wiggle room within for the condition. And I just took off. It basically what it ended up doing was saying like, there are things that I can't control, but I can still meet my goals or have a good time and not consider it a failure.
Yes.
If those things outside my control go against me, was kind of like how I psychologically set it up. So I try to do that. I'm trying to do that now more with like my kids and, in business is to like try to like fear my goals a little bit.
Yes. It keeps us out of all or nothing thinking.
Yeah.
I wish I had known that approach when I first started running races. I mean, I got myself into a place where I just was like, I want a PR for the marathon. I want PR for the marathon. What does PR stand for? Personal
record.
Record. I'm like, result? That's not right. And some people will say PB, personal best. And I stopped having fun.
Yeah, totally.
It became all or nothing. It became like I'm wishing for top fitness, best course, best weather, everything in order to make it happen. And so in order to learn that lesson, I actually had to step away from marathons for a while. And that's when I shifted to triathlons. I'm like, I need a new challenge. I need a just complete it goal and shift my thinking around that. And I eventually have come around to, okay, I can have different tiers of goals. Or sometimes I go into a race and it's like, this isn't a great location. I want to finish feeling strong and I want to enjoy the ocean views. And that's the goal.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk nowadays from, leaders in like on LinkedIn and creators and people. This has permeated for a long time, but I think it's more pervasive now. Like there are a lot of people talking about process and consistency and, working on your inputs and being sort of ruthless with your process, but then letting go of the outcome piece because we're most of us are wired to cling to that outcome, and that leaves us in that gap state. Like we're always falling short of that outcome. And so that was one of the reasons why I didn't wear a watch during the race. And I don't do that. I haven't done a race in a while, but I don't do every race I did since then was without a watch. So I would have a watch and I would have training times and I would watch that. I would monitor that, the whole process and all of training. So I had the data and I could, understand. But then that was my psychological letting go of the outcome piece. So it was like, I put in all the work. I have to be proud of whatever happens here. I'm going to take the watch off and I'm going to go by feel. And that's how it's going to work. And that was really helpful for me because I was not a person. If you knew me when I was younger, I was not a person to be that way. I was a type A, like to the wall outcome. That's all that matters. Nothing is done until it's finished and you have the outcome. And I just, over the process of training and having kids, and I've just completely done a 180 on that. That was one thing that really helped me was I talked to a coach who was like, yeah, just take it off. Who cares?
That's what I was just going to say, Mike. I'm over here. These are nods of familiarity. Yes, I did. I had a coach that was like, you got to start running without your watch.
Yeah.
Lady, you've got to shift this up until she finally is like, okay, trust you to put your watch back on.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I promise I don't look at it. I look at it at the end.
Oh, that's so funny. So I want to round out the conversation. We talked about pillars. We talked about how you define courage. My definition is something that's maybe it's not a definition, but it's in my head all the time. It's the ability to separate and go anyway. Mm-hmm. So you feel that fear, you separate it from reality, and you decide that it's still worth it. Like whatever that thing is that you go after. Like I think that separation is a skill. And then that ability to go forward anyway. So that brings me to, how do you develop courage in somebody? Where is the starting point? We have to get them to take actions. We have to have your pillars make sense. But if you've got somebody who's like, I just can't, I'm so scared. Where do we start? How do we get people on this flywheel of being more courageous?
I think often what has people go forward anyways is that commitment, that bigger picture commitment that they have. So what is that commitment? What is that authentic, genuine thing that's like that is calling for me? That is worth me being scared out of my mind and, stepping forward and doing this thing. So that commitment piece. And then I think it's, maybe there's three. The belief work.
Yep.
Which might be tied to the third thing I was going to say, like that belief in ourselves, that belief in our intentions, right? I'm up to good work here. This is going to create a win-win-win, right? And I can be the one to move forward and take this on, right? Like why not me? Or it is me, right? I'm being called to this. So that belief work, that you're reminding ourselves of our strengths, the work that we've put in, right? I think of it like right before race day, right? Looking back at those training logs, like, right? Like, look at it.
Yes.
I've done the work. Believe in this, right? You've done the process, right? So now go and have fun on the day. So the commitment and the belief work and being grounded in the value that we know we can provide.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. Like for me and what we do with my coaching clients, people in my community is we do an advantage map, which is your core, your purpose and how you not only can, but do already create value in the world, right? Like, so I think knowing where you are, because a lot of people don't, they're not confident in what they actually do. There's imposter syndrome there, but like having this map of, I am a valuable person and here are all the ways is the foundation of where they are today. And then we create that future vision.
Okay.
Like, what is that future vision of your life? Like, ideally, what do you want your life to be like? And then the gap is in that belief work, where that belief work is the process of buying into that future vision. So you have to do things like pump yourself up, like visualize, like reprogram your software to ladder up to that vision. Like that's essentially the process of doing something completely different, like changing your career and changing your life and designing your world. And that all takes courage. So I view it as the same thing. It's like we start small and then you have a little foundation and then you start taking micro actions, and each one is a bigger and bolder, piece of information that is telling you you're capable, you can do these things. And that all feeds belief.
Yes. And you create that momentum. You create that.
The momentum.
Viral.
Yeah. I got some rapid fire questions for you and we'll close this thing out. But this has been amazing. I love this topic. And so I hope our listeners get a lot of value out of it. I think they will. All right, here we go. Is there a recent author, thought leader, or influencer besides yourself that you've come across that has really caught your attention and you think people need to know more about?
All right. When you first started saying author, I'm like Brene Brown, but she's pretty well known. So there is a book, I don't have it within my reach, Dr. Jha. I can't think of her first name in this moment, Jha. And she talks about mindfulness and the different ways that our brain focuses.
Okay. Mindfulness is big. Focus, concentration, choosing, all of that stuff is very big. What's your favorite thing about Brene?
How she talks really real about vulnerability and what she means by vulnerability and getting into it and willing to rumble and say, I'm nervous to have this conversation. I'm not sure how we're going to work this through. Here's some thoughts and feelings that I have. Here's where I think I messed up. I think that makes for powerful people and powerful leadership, where we used to have this paradigm of, leaders are strong and leaders have all of the answers. The example that I shared with you today about a sales leader that really inspired me, she was talking about the pieces that she didn't know. And I think that has us respect and believe and follow leaders even more.
Yeah, makes sense. So my next question is about another book. The question is, what book are you reading now or have read recently that's influenced you? You talked about the mindfulness book. I'm going to amend the question though, and I want to know what book has had the most impact on your life.
Okay, what's coming up is Leadership and Self-Deception.
Ooh, juicy.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Arbington Institute, I think, is who put that forward. It talks about, in a very accessible way, the personal responsibility that we have in leadership. And it's really led me, like in my coaching work, sometimes we can't control other people. Right. And we can do our very best work to influence, what we think is the ideal outcome or situation that needs to happen. And just always looking, like if things are not going well, what am I not doing? Right? Or what could I do differently? Or how am I contributing to the situation? I think it's the most powerful place to come from. And I think it has made me a better coach. And I think it's made me a better person, right? And I often think like, okay, what do I need to do in this situation so I feel good about myself when I put my head on the pillow at night? And if this is something that I care about, and I was about to go all in complaining mode and pointing my finger at other people about what they're not doing right, if this is something that I care about, spend that energy on it. Okay, let's spend my energy in a different way. How can I influence this in the way that I want?
Okay, great. I want your one piece of advice for someone that's just starting out in the world. Maybe they're just getting out of college or getting their first job. Like, number one piece of advice for someone who's green behind the ears.
Yeah. So much of me wants to say, declare your leadership legacy, right? Like decide what your purpose is, right? And start living into that fully, right? And you'll be able to adjust from there. I also interviewed a CEO on the Courage of a Leader podcast, Jim Ryan, and he said he's used this throughout his career. Ask for advice and counsel.
Yeah.
Right? Just
it's good.
Ask for help. Ask for what you want. Keep learning.
Excellent. All right. We've got, inflation. We've got conflict in the Middle East. We've got, God forbid, an election coming up. A lot of negativity in the air. I want to know what's got you excited about the next 12 months.
Oh, this sounds not world focused enough. But
that's okay.
One of the things that I have put on my plan, my intentions for the year is to choose adventure. And I will be living in and working from Paris in the month of May. I've just decided in this post-pandemic world, we can do this, right? There's some in-person gigs I've had to turn down in the US to make that happen, but I can do plenty of work from there during May. I'm traveling for a half Ironman race in July. I've got some friends that have been talking about, like, let's take a trip to Ireland together, a group of ladies. That's happening. I'm like, these are things that I've wanted to do, and I'm choosing adventure. So, look at, like, for everybody, I guess, like, look at how you can say yes to the things that you most want to say yes to. Sometimes we think it's gotta be A or Z. Like, how can you make it happen? Like, because we all have constraints, and who knows, I might not love being away from my family for a whole month. But I'm lucky in the situation and in our post-pandemic world that I feel like I can travel a bit and still work.
That's great. I mean, I would say choose adventure and mic drop, like for everybody. I mean, life is an adventure. We can't figure it all out. It's not going to go to plan. It's an exploration. And, like you just admitted, like you think you want to travel. So you are doing that with intention, recognizing that you don't know the future and it may be wrong. So it's an experiment. That's it.
Yes, it is.
And you're going to make some memories. You're going to have some fun regardless, even if it is ultimately quote unquote bad. And that's what life is. It's just a series of experiments. So I love that.
Choose adventure. Yeah, that's great.
Choose adventure. Choose adventure in your work too. You can have an adventure in your work.
Yeah.
Just start thinking about what you want, not what everybody else wants. Think about what you want and start planning experiments in that direction and course correct over time. And you're going to have an adventureful life. Amy, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing. The last question is, where can people find you online if they want to know more about you or follow you?
Yeah. courageofaleader.com is the website. You can also find The Courage of a Leader on LinkedIn. Those are probably the two best places.
Excellent. We will have links to all of that in the show notes when this is published. We will have links to everything else that we've talked about. If we've mentioned a book or any other resource, we'll have those links in there for you as always.
I'll get the title, the Dr. Jean's book, and get that in there.
Yeah, just shoot us an email and we'll put it in there. That'll be great. Amy, thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your time in Chicago and enjoy your time in Paris. My gosh, that's going to be amazing. Send me a postcard or drop me a line because I would love to know how it goes for you. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.